Okay, so for week 2, your second item of the week, we're going to move from you coding along and submitting to me just between you and I to you doing some group work to share it with the entire course. So just know that when you see group work in this class, it means that work is going to be set up such that everyone can look at your work. All right. So what you're going to basically do is kind of take what we've learned so far and create a website. In this case, it'll have 3 pages. I'll walk you through this in a minute. The topic of this work will be, why am I taking this course? Now, use only the HTML and CSS we have learned so far. Don't go beyond that. And even if you know how to go beyond, don't, because we're really trying to say, use what we've learned. And it's good to see other people find creative ways to learn to use what we've learned. Okay, so you're going to create files. And in this case, I want you to create a W2 folder in your public repo. And this is way important. You have to use your public repo because in a little bit, when I walk through the bottom part of this instruction, I'll show you why it's important. So let me just show you. I'll move over to VS Code. And I had set up another repo just to kind of play around. And in here, right now, by the way, what will happen is over the course, you'll start to see other more and more of this, meaning more and more list of files. For this particular work, like I've shown before, I do recommend just opening these public repos on their own without having this base folder open. But again, just know, why. And I talked about that last time. So in here, in this folder, I don't have anything. Okay, this is a repo. Looks like a folder on my system, but it is a repo. So in here, I'm going to create, like we have done before on the private where we had here, but now I want to have you create, and this is what's important, is to click this. And by the way, let me make this a little bigger, and then hit new folder. The key is where your active directory is when you hit new folder, and then you do W2. Okay, for week 2. Now in the W2 folder, we're going to create files. Now I'm just going to create the first one, index, and by the way, generally always index is your first file. Okay, now notice when it turns green, that just means you've created files that you have not version controlled yet. These are untracked files, which is fine, and I actually will have you have certain commit steps along the way. So now that you've learned from Dave what those basic HTML tags are, you can just use the explanation and tab. Now the key to that is naming the file HTML, and therefore Emmet kicks in and it sets this up for you. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that, right? Now in here, and I talked about don't use any of the stylings or the content we've already written, right? In the index, right, you're going to, in the head section, include metadata. Now we learned about metadata, so if you want to go review, you can check that out. And the metadata is around why I'm taking this course. Now you're going to come up with something. I'm not going to give you that. I want you to come up with it. And then create a CSS file, main CSS, and use and have these selectors. Now you may not populate them yet because we don't have things to check them. I'm just telling you here are the ones eventually you're going to at minimum want for all the pages you create. And then find a favicon and then create 2 additional HTML files, and you're going to call them goals.html and learn-more HTML. Really important. When you're naming files, when you're creating file names, it should be all lowercase, no spaces ever. So just make sure you're following that naming convention. And on these files, also do those basic tags. Make sure your code validates. And now what you could do is go ahead and commit this with step 1. Okay, so you do a commit message, you do your version control, your git add, your git commit, and then you can move on. Okay, so now in your index, create a nav section and create links to the goals HTML and the index.html. And make sure you've created a back link somewhere to, on the sub pages so that it goes back to the index. Okay? Now, on the index file, you need at least 2 sections. We talked about sections in here. And the first section is reasons why you think learning HTML is a good idea. Which, by the way, if you want to be a little snarky here and say why it's not, that's, have fun with this, is my point. Okay, we have a second section on this index, right? And will be websites you visit often. Now, I haven't given you a number here, but I'd want to see at least 3. And you can use unordered list right here and link to those sites and set the href to open in a new tab or window. So part of what I'm doing on this exercise is seeing how well you're translating what you're writing into understanding what we call those things. And if you're not, it's okay. You can go Google or look back at the examples we've been given. So once you complete this step, then commit with step 2. Now, in the goals HTML, write a good, so now we have a new file here, write a good paragraph about your goals, both academically and personally. Now, if you're not comfortable sharing, make those up. But, it's also fun for us to get to know each other, so consider doing, what your actual goals are. But I also don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable about that. So, and then use headings for this content, right? And this also would be a great place to use sections. Now, in the Learn HTML, which is your other file, list at least 3 tags you feel you want to know more about, right? So of the tags we've already gone over, okay? And then use either Chat GPT, that you can get a free account on Chat, it's totally available, or Google to find content about these tags. Now, here's the key: content that has not been covered so far in the course. Now, so you're going to come up with the 3 tags, right? Source some content we haven't covered before, and then you'll figure out how you want to include them on your page. The one thing about using Chat is that content, you can copy and paste it, and then when you provide links, you can just provide links to the chat, but you can also provide us your prompts. And what do I mean by prompts? This is probably a great time to start talking about it. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and log in, right, into my account. I'm just not logged in right now. And the prompts are basically here. Okay, ask away. I'm going to use 3.5 because that's probably the one you guys are going to be using. So I might want to ask something about entities, right? So maybe explain, right, HTML entities to a 5th grader. Okay, so this would be fun because, one of the things about, and you don't have to say 5th grader, you could just say explain them and then come back here and read this and figure out if Chat did a good job of explaining it like it was to a 5th grader. You could also say a high schooler, you could also say a college graduate, or you could again leave it off. And part of learning how to use Chat is just learning how to write prompts. Okay, so I just want to do that little diversion right there, just to understand if you use Chat and you're copying and pasting information into your page for this part of it, then you could just provide links to Chat. But when you're doing something like Google, right? If you use, did I put Google here? Yeah, because that's actually the other one you could use. On Google, you could actually provide links to the content itself. So you kind of figure out which way you want to do this, right? And again, define content about these tags that have not been covered in the course. And this is what I was just saying, is make sure you provide links and or content. Okay, so each page needs content at the bottom that acts like a footer. And the reason I say that is we actually have a tag called footer we haven't covered. So use entities to create links to our GitHub organization. So each page, again, we at this point have 3, we'd want to have a link to our GitHub organization for the bottom, and use entities for copyright and other things you want to include down there. Now, each page, right, needs to include at least 2 of the following: list, and there's 3 kinds of list we've learned: list items, address tag, image tag, figure tag, and fig cap tag. Okay, so at least 2, and really you could do more and make it a little more fun. And at this point, you can go ahead and hit a commit once you get this set up. Now at this point, before we move on, you can go iterate. Like you don't, if once you get to step 3, then you can go back and play some more. If you want to add some more content, maybe somewhere else, right? It's okay. At this point, I'm giving you 3 commit messages. Okay. So now the thing is, we're not sharing commits like you did when you were in the private and sharing along the code alongs. I'm just doing this to give you a structured way, and for me, honestly, to see the iteration of your work. Okay? Now, what you're going to do, because now we're preparing for you to share it with the class. Okay? So GitHub, and I have GitHub setting here, and I have done a query just for my repos. Okay? On your public, and this only works on public repos. And by the way, public repos means that, yes, they're inside of our GitHub organization, but anybody from the outside can see them. Now, why that's important is we can also use something called GitHub Pages to actually render our folders as HTML, as a website, which is really cool. So in here, let me show you how to do this. So once you're ready to look at what your site, because right now, and let me just actually stop and say this, right now, you're looking at your site, right? Now there's nothing on mine, but you're looking at it from the local. And so you can't give us this URL, and I said this on a code along, but you giving us that URL, only you can see that. We can't. But what I'm about to show you is for you, once you push your code to GitHub, is that URL is accessible to us, which is totally fun and the way we get to see each other's work. Okay, so now that I've briefly done a little diversion there, so you go into your public repo. Now again, I just created one to show you this part. And under here, you go into settings. And under settings, you go to pages. Right, so you go to your public repo, you go to settings. Under settings, you go to pages. Under pages, you come down here and you select main. It may already be selected, if not, and then root, and then you would hit root, and then you would hit save. Okay. Now I've already been playing with this. Actually deploy. Actually, because I had deleted this, it's not showing me that option right now. But I'm just showing you when you come in here, you'll get the save button. Okay, now when you do that, it seems like nothing happens. You'll be like, what? I thought I was going to get a URL. Well, I'm about to show you where that URL can be found, and it's under the same place, but I'm just going to move over to my other repo to show you. Okay, so I'm going to move back to here. I'm going to move back to here and here. And then under my public one, it's that same place. You go to settings, you go to pages. And under pages, what you will see, and again, it could take a few minutes, is you see this URL and you just copy this. Now, every time we do group work, we're going to have a new subdirectory that will be here. So like this week, it's W2. So now this is not going to render as a website. I'm just showing you the example. So if I did W2, W3 wouldn't work. And actually even W2, I think I haven't put anything up in there. But the important part is to know that's the URL that you will share inside of our discussion. Know this as well. One of the things, I've had some other students using this feature, and sometimes there's a delay between the time you push code. So as an example, like I just created this. Let's actually see, do I have something that's private? I could just quickly here put W2, right? It's probably be a good example. Index.html, right? Oh, actually, you know what I did there? Check this out. What I did there was and this could happen, I accidentally created a folder called index.html, and that's not what I wanted. Delete it permanently. Let's make sure that shows up. Hold on just a second. Oh, that's what it was. And this is good to know. The reason it was still showing up as a folder. Now, I actually jumped over that really quickly, and you might have wondered how I could tell. And it's the way the file was being listed, because it was listed at the same level. So I was doing a folder when I should have done a file. So I could do index.html, right? then I could put something like this just so it'll show up. Week 2 group work. Now I'm showing you this group work. It is to show you that sometimes, and I'm just going to come down here now that I'm here, I'm going to do the version control, git add star, git commit -m demoing. Okay, and then git push. Remember, it's not until, and by the way, you can do those 3 commits. It's not until you want to see it on GitHub or on the website that you need to do this step. Okay, so now that I'm there, you might think immediately now, and we can also look at, we can come over here to my pub, right, and see, oh yeah, just now Rio published an index file, so we should be able to see it. Now, there may be, part of this depends on the time of the day you're working and if other people are working on GitHub. And the nice thing is you don't have to come back here every time to get it. You can just copy and paste this, and then whenever we update or do a new one, you just add that directory on. So let's see now. Let's see if, actually that is the right URL, and it's still not showing up. So this could make you think it doesn't work. So the point is that just wait a little while. As a matter of fact, one thing I could do is set index.html to see if it is there. And oh, it is there. It's just not rendering correctly. So just know there could be a lag. That's my whole point about this right here, right? Okay, so sorry if that jumped around a little bit, but hopefully you got it. The important steps of where to, how to create, how to have it published, and then how to know, or how to look to see if it is actually being received up here or not. And I notice actually the title tag is there, so it actually is there, but for some reason, because it is working. Oh, there we go. It is actually working. So even actually from the time I just did that, it started working. Again, your page is going to look much different. It'll be here. All right, so what you will do in your post is you'll share that URL, okay? There you go. Now, by the way, notice mine needs to say W2. That way, when somebody clicks on the link, they can actually see it. Okay? And then write 100 words in here minimum about, about this work that you did. Now, that's 80% of your points. If you you include all the required content and code I listed above, you'll be good to go. All right? Now, 20 points comes from reviewing your review of another student site. Now, and here's the deal. If somebody else has already reviewed that site, then don't review that one, unless there's just not another one to do, okay? And here's the thing, is when students, and this happens when they're waiting until the last, kind of that night before it's due and they're working, then there may be other students waiting on this post. And so one of the things I've often considered is making your main post be due before. So I don't know, we'll see how well this one goes. I'm hopefully giving you that heads up to encourage you to get this done earlier. Okay, so what you would do here is post this, write 100 words, right? 100 words about your experience. And then you will go, right, and review somebody else's site. Now, what would you review? You would just give them general, did their link work? If their link didn't work, you'd want to tell them that, right? Give them feedback about their output or the code that they wrote or the way, what you saw that was unique in the way they did things, right? And again, if somebody's already given feedback, then make sure you find another student. And only if there's no other students to post can you reply to one that's already had a feedback. Okay, have fun with this, because it is intended for you to have fun with this. All right, we'll talk to you later.